Gentlemen, if we could please rise for the meeting of June 22nd, 2020, Board of Selectmen. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, justice for all. Thank you. And everybody was on mute. Good. All right, Mr. Sagarino, I'd like to start with our first agenda item.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask Selectman Priest to read his beginning speech? I know he loves doing it. He hasn't memorized at this point, but.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that gather in one place. This public hearing of the Town of Burlington Board of Selectmen is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but the public can listen and or view this meeting while in progress as broadcast on BCAT Government Cable Access Television, BCAT Government Coverage Facebook Live page, or by using the link provided in the agenda for our WebEx Frisco online meeting, or via phone at 408-418-9388, meeting number 129-276-0857. Members of the public attending this meeting virtually will be allowed to make comments if they wish to do so during the portion of the hearing designated for public comment by commenting on the BCAT Government Coverage Facebook Live page, the chat function on the WebEx virtual meeting, or via telephone at 781-270-1635. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Selectman Priest will be monitoring comments on Facebook Live and the WebEx chat, and I will monitor the phone line at 781-270-1635. We do have some public hearings on the agenda tonight that public will be able to comment on if they wish to do so. And just as a reminder to the board, all votes are required to be done by roll call for virtual meetings. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So the first item is reorganization of the board. Gentlemen?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Considering the unique set of circumstances we're under, I'm going to request that to keep you on as chair. I think you're doing a great job. These, and you've taken the ball with the way things are going remotely. So I'm going to nominate that you remain as chairman.
Thank you.
Second.
Second from Mike.
Yeah.
Okay, Betty, we need a roll call vote on this. Yes.
All roll call votes, Mr. Chairman.
All roll call vote.
All right. Okay, gentlemen. Mr. Hogan.
Mute. You're muted.
Bob, you're on mute. It's on the reorganization.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Runyon.
Yes.
Mr. Tigas.
Yes.
Mr. Priest. You're muted, Nick.
I think he's got a connection issue as well.
You guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you, Nick.
That was a yes, Nick.
It sounded like it.
And myself, yes. So 5-0-0 in favor of me being chairman again. Thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate that. For something I didn't think I wanted to do, I absolutely love sitting in this chair. So thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Keep laughing, Paul. All right. Second, nomination for vice chairman.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to nominate Selectman Tigas to continue in the role as vice chair.
Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Second is from Bob. Okay, gentlemen, roll call vote on this. Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Mr. Runyon,
yes,
Mr. Tiggs,
Yes.
Mr. Priest,
Yes.
myself, yes. 500, Betty.
Thank you for the nomination, Mike, and thank you, gentlemen.
Yes, very much so. Now we'll go back to an update. Mr. Sagarino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have an update on the town's water situation. We have our Public Works Director, John Sanchez, here to discuss this with the board. John?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman. It's going to be a couple of items related to where we are with water. And just to give you a little bit of background, when the pandemic started in March, the town was using about 2 million gallons of water per day. As you know, before the end of May, we lifted our water ban and we went to our traditional yearly, every other day, water restrictions that we have in place. And those saw an increase in the water use from 2 to about 3.5 million gallons a day, which we have been managing since beginning of June. It just so happened that May and June have been very, very dry, as we all know it, and hot, particularly the last week. And during the last week, we saw an increase from what it had been about 3.5 million gallons to close to 5 million gallons a day. Now, note that there are not a lot of businesses that are operating right now. Restaurants were finally given the green light to open at 50%, I believe is today. And what we've seen is a lot of residential watering that is happening. We have sent over 100 violations right now, first offense, and a couple of tickets to people who are not complying with the current water restriction. But what is really worrisome to us is that we are at the limit. On Saturday, we sent a code-red message to our residents and businesses that we are at capacity. We cannot produce any more water than what we are doing right now. And our fear is that once that businesses open and once that we have people coming back, we're not going to be able to meet the demand that we currently have out there. So is a major issue happening right now. We believe that a lot has to do with the fact that people are at home. A lot of residents are here. They're not going away as typically they do in the summer. And we've seen an increase in residential use, particularly domestic use. I'm not talking about irrigation per se, of about 20%. But now with the dry weather that's been compounded, and we are really at the limit of what we can do for production. So after I answer any questions you may have, I was going to propose that we go to the next step, which will be a mandatory restriction that we would only allow 2 nights a week for watering. And also, in addition to what I said in my memo that I attached for your agenda tonight, those restrictions should be that they can water between the hours of 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. only. And that is because we see quite a few people out there who, in their day, they actually water twice. They water in the morning and they water again in the evening. So it's not really helping our water situation here in town. Now, with my projections, this may reduce somewhat the demand, because now instead of watering an average of 3.5 times a week, now you can only water twice a week. And they may reduce the amount of watering by about 500,000 gallons per day in average. But we have to keep an eye on it. As restrictions for COVID are lifted and more people will come back to work, we're nervous about whether or not we're going to be able to meet demand. So this is an interim place, an interim step. Hopefully this is going to carry us through the season. But if it continues to be as the drought is happening right now, we may have to actually impose another water ban in the future, which obviously we do not want to. but when we need to choose between residential and domestic water use against irrigation, we're always going to choose that and fire protection. So with that, I will answer any questions you may have regarding our current situation in my proposal.
Thank you, John. So we'll just start, we'll start the other way tonight. We're gonna start with, Nick. Any questions, Nick, on this proposed water
Thank you,
situation?
Mr. Chairman. Yeah, you know, it's been a very dry beginning of the season for sure. John, a couple quick things, if I may. The first is, you know, could you just take a moment to explain to folks who are watching or folks who may wind up watching this, why, I mean, high level, why we're doing the ban, and the importance of having water on tap, excuse the pun, you know, the need for the town to have, you know, a certain amount of water kind of on hand at any given time.
Nick, you were breaking up a little bit. But can you repeat your question, please?
Yeah, could you, for the sake of folks who are watching, could you explain the importance of having water in reserve?
Yes, if I understand what you're asking, so we in Burlington, the way we currently manage our water is via our wells at Divine Brook, which we're limited by how much water we can put out because of the contamination that we have had there over the last 5+ years. And we also use water from our Mill Pond Reservoir. Now, our Mill Pond Reservoir, interestingly enough, we have to pump water to it to fill it. So this is not a natural basin that will fill up naturally. We need to actually pump water from the Shoshin River, and we can put up to 500 million gallons of water in there. But we can only do that when there is water in the river. And during a drought, there is no water in the river. So based on our projections of how much water we need to save in the reservoir to carry us throughout the season, we are already at that limit. That if we continue to use water at the rate that we're doing right now, we're going to run that reservoir dry before the end of the summer. So we need to take steps now so we'll have enough water to carry us until October. And we're at that limit right now. This is why, I mean, we don't like imposing any type of restrictions, but this is why I'm asking the board to look into doing that. But yes, Nick, that's a very good point. Even though the reservoir may look fairly full, I mean, we're looking that it has to last us all the way through October.
Thanks, John. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Jimmy? Mr. Takes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John, I think I know the answer to this question, but is there any way of capping the amount of output each day? In other words, can we mechanically slow the amount of or reduce the amount of water that can go out in the 24-hour period or at any point in time?
Well, we have the ability of reducing the amount we produce, but we do not have the ability to stop our residents or businesses from using the water that is in the system, other than
My connection's good
by
right now.
the way we've been doing it is through issuing warnings and fines if we need to. But once the water goes into the system, is pretty much free to use at that point by anybody who wants to use it for watering or else. But so it's not a matter of not being able to produce it. I mean, it's a matter of them using it. I don't know if that answered the question, Jim.
No, it does. I just want the residents, like Mr. Priest said, just to make the residents aware. I mean, one, we were already at a deficit for water because of the dioxin situation and the COVID situation, and now it's been very dry. So it's a perfect lack of a storm, I guess you could say. But it's all these things combined that's causing this issue. I know people are upset and people get angry, and I know John has asked, what would you like us to do? So what would you like us to do? I mean, I agree with what you have to do. You got to do what you got to do, John, and thank you for doing that. I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Thank you very much, Mr. Takes. Mr. Runyon?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Issuing over 100 warnings already is disturbing. I think we've done a fairly good job of getting word out to the residents. I don't know anyone who's not aware of how the odd even thing works. I'm not sure what more we can do, quite honest with you. Maybe John, I'm sure we all know most of the sprinkler contractors in town. Perhaps you should be reaching out to them and asking them to please, advise their customers, to dial them back, or whatever they have to do. I think, and I think most people should be aware that, you only need 1 inch of water per week to maintain a healthy lawn. I see John Keeley on the call here. He'd probably agree with me on that. But anyhow, I'm kind of at wit's end. I'm very, very sorry to hear that we've got that many warnings being issued so soon in the season. I like the idea of a 2-day watering program. I mean, I'm willing to give that a try for now and see how it goes. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Hogan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John, could you go over very briefly the balance between the business community and the residential as far as the use goes, and why you are starting your conversation by saying a lot of people aren't back to work yet, so that's not a problem?
So typically in a year, when you look at the entire year of water use, we're about 50-50, 50% businesses and 50% residential water use. It's a little strange right now because of the COVID situation. What we're seeing is we're seeing people at home, and we're estimating that to be at about 20%, maybe even higher, of how much more water residents are using for the regular use. This is not about watering. So when you take those numbers and extrapolate in the fact that businesses are probably about half open, so there's another 50% that may be out there. So if they were to come in tomorrow, at the rate that we're using water, we're not going to meet that demand. I mean, we're probably going to be seeing another 500,000 gallons of water used by businesses once that they come back to work, if that happens anytime soon. But more important than that, Bob, is the fact that at the rate we're using that water out of that reservoir, it's not going to last us the season. So we can wait and look and then decide in July or August at what point we stop. But I think we should reserve what we have to meet our regular demand, including fire protection. But yeah, again, to your question, it's about 50-50. And then the other thing that I don't have the number in front of me right now, in the summertime, we do see an increase on water use by people watering and businesses watering. And if I remember correctly, on the residential side, that number more than doubles. It goes up like 120%, I believe it was, versus on the commercial side, I thought it was at about 60 or 70%. I have to look that number up because I don't have it in front of me. Because even though everybody waters, on the residential side, we tend to water a little more than on the commercial side, unfortunately.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So, John, you've been here quite a bit now with this water thing. Every single year we go through this, and every single year, yourself, Mr. Sagarino, and the Board of Selectmen and every other official in town takes a lot of guff for it, because when are we going to get hooked up? When are we going to get hooked up with the water? So, with this situation that we have right now, what I'd really like to do is, I'd like to put it back out there again. I know you did a reverse 911 call, but I'd also like to maybe put it back out there again to try to reiterate what we've already accomplished with some of these people that just don't grab the concept of, do you want to take a shower? Do you want to put out a fire? Or do you want to water your grass? I mean, they don't understand the fact that, or maybe they do understand it, they just don't care. I don't know which one it is, to be honest with you. But I would really like to see us put it on every social media that we have. Again, I know we've done it twice already, I believe it is. I don't think I could ask any more of you, Mr. Sanchez, the way you've handled this whole situation. I think it's been fantastic. The 2 nights from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. That's it. That's the only time they can water. Just those 2 days first. We as a board, we completely understand what's going on because we hear these numbers every day. We hear these numbers every week. We see what's going on. The average resident, the only thing they hear is, oh, another water ban in Burlington. That's all they hear. So that's all I can really say about this. Your numbers are incredible. I've talked to you about this a couple times already. So that's the only thing I would like to see. I would like to see us do a little bit, once again, do another social media gathering and put it all out there again. So those are my thoughts on this.
So if I may, Mr. Chairman, we most definitely will put it out again if you were to vote this news restriction. Every medium that we have available. As you know, we tried to do press releases last week.
Yep.
We went out on BCAT, tried to do a few things to try to get our residents and businesses to reduce the use. And unfortunately, by Friday, actually, we hit the max. Even though we have been trying to get the attention from everybody to help us with this situation. But that's what we are, and we'll definitely put it out there if approved tonight.
Okay. So at this point, gentlemen, I'll need a motion to go to 2 days a week, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. and to be Tuesdays and Saturdays only for watering. Someone needs to make a motion on that.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second it.
Motion is made and seconded, and a roll call vote on this. Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Mr. Runyon,
Yes.
Mr. Tiggs,
Yes.
Mr. Priest,
Yes.
Mr. Morandi, yes. 5-0-0 in favor of going to 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Saturdays, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Boy, you're gonna watch those meters fly between 6 and 10.
And if I may, Mr. that was effective immediately, am I correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's starting, today is Tuesday, so, no, today's Monday. So they can water tomorrow between 6 and 10 tomorrow night. All right?
Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you.
Good night.
Mr. Sagarino,
Thank you, John. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next agenda item, we have some appointments in our police department. I'd like to turn it over to Chief Kent to present the specifics to the board.
Thank you very much. I have 3 people to recommend for a police officer position. They come out of a process that we had, I believe it was last August, when we gave our entry test. And just to familiarize you on how we do it, we give a test. And once the passing grade is decided, the people that pass do a physical assessment test. And after the physical assessment test, those that pass that are forwarded to a panel. I believe it's 8 people on the panel who whittles it down again to a list that is forwarded to the town administrator and I to interview for open positions. I believe on this last test, I don't have the exact figures in front of me, but I believe we were a tick under 200 people taking the test. We're always looking for more. We reach out to neighboring communities. We try and advertise broadly to expand our base of people taking the test. The 3 that I'm going to be recommending tonight, we got a little shorted on meetings, so they are actually currently in the police academy. They didn't need to be appointed to go into police academy, but they will be graduating in a couple weeks. So before your next meeting. So that's why we are appointing them tonight. And that's why they weren't appointed before the academy. It just didn't work out with the calendar. So I have 3, as I say. The first one, I'm going in alphabetical order. When they graduate, another nice thing about not being in the civil service system, their seniority position will be decided by their ranking in the class. So it really gives them something to work for because it could pay off in the years to come, to have two people underneath you right off the bat and going forward. So I'm just going alphabetical order. The first gentleman is Kristin Cochrane. He's from Dracut. He spent early part of his youth in the Texas area. He has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from UMass Lowell. He received that in 2019. And prior to being hired by the department, he worked in protective services in both a unarmed and armed position since 2017. Again, came across very well in the interviews. I think he'll be a excellent addition to the police department. Paul, do you want me to go through all three, or do you want to do them individually?
Chief, I think it makes sense for us to do them individually, if that's okay with you.
Yep, whatever you want, sir.
All right, so I would like to, with the chief's recommendations, I wish to appoint Kristin Cochrane to the position of patrolman in the Burlington Police Department and ask that the board waive its 15-day waiting period.
So moved.
So moved by Jimmy, second by Bob. Any comments? Okay, we'll take a vote on this, please. Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Mr. Runyon,
Yes.
Mr. Tigas,
Yes.
Mr. Priest.
Yes.
Mr. Miranda, yes. There you go, Chief. There's one.
All right, thank you. Next one, Brian Goggin, from Billerica, Mass. He has a bachelor in criminal justice from Norwich University, which he received in 2018. Prior to us hiring him, he was a full-time police officer for the city of Concord, New Hampshire. He went through their academy in New Hampshire and finished his class. Seems like a fine young man. Wanted to come back to the Massachusetts area. Was very familiar with the Burlington PD, and I think he'll be an excellent addition to the department. And I would recommend him.
Thank you very much, Chief. And with the chief's recommendation, I appoint Brian Goggin to the position of patrolman in the Burlington Police Department and ask that the board waive its 15-day waiting period.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Bob, second by Jim.
Second.
Comments? And there being none, go to a vote. Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Mr. Runyon,
Yes.
Mr. Tigas,
Yes.
Mr. Priest.
Yes.
Mr. Miranda, yes. There you go.
Thank you. The third we have is Hayden Matarazzo. He originally hails from Oakhurst, New Jersey. He came to this area to attend UMass Lowell, where he graduated with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice with minors in psychology and business. While at UMass Lowell, he was a 4-year varsity lacrosse player. He has worked in the hospitality industry through college and since getting out since 2015. Came to this area. Really never had any intention of going back to New Jersey, fell in love with New England, with Massachusetts, and was very impressive in his interview. So I would recommend Mr. Matarazzo for an appointment.
Thank you, Chief. With Chief Kent's recommendation, I appoint Hayden Matarazzo to the position of patrolman in the Burlington Police Department and ask that the board waive its 15-day waiting period.
So moved.
Second.
Bob, any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, if I could very quickly,
Absolutely.
considering where we are in time, it's nice to see that we have good candidates still coming forward to participate in an area of public safety and public service that is so important. So thank these three men, and Chief, take good care of them.
Absolutely. And I thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may chime in as well.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to say thank you to the chief and deputy chief because they've really fine-tuned the hiring process. As he stated, we went from 200 candidates down to 3. So they really do a great job at narrowing the field. They go through the the recruits go through an extensive background check, and they're all educated, and their education doesn't stop with college or with the academy, because they have to go through an extensive field training program. And as you know, the chief is very strong on training, and Burlington is a very well-trained police department, and I just want to thank them for all their efforts over the years for really professionalizing the police department.
Thank you.
You all set, Jim?
Yeah, I think I'm done.
Just checking. All right, so we need a vote on this. Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Mr. Onion,
Yes.
Mr. Tigas,
Yes.
Mr. Priest,
Yes.
Mr. Miranda, yes. So 5-0-0 again.
Thank you very much. It's, I appreciate, the department appreciates the support.
Thank you, Chief.
Absolutely, Chief.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. I have to turn the page. Mr. Sagarino, next on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next up, we have the town's Economic Development Director, Melissa Cochrane, is here with some additional tweaks to our temporary outdoor seating regulation. She's been working really hard on this with the members of our business reopening team to move things forward. We've been constantly evaluating the rules and the guidance to do the best we can for businesses, but still maintaining quality and safety for the customers. I noticed, I believe, Building Commissioner Andy Ungerson has also joined us for this agenda item. And with that, I'll turn it over to Melissa to fill the board in on what adjustments have been made to what we've been working on. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Chairman Randy, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly, yes.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yep.
Great. So at our last meeting, we approved guidelines. They were called the temporary extension of premises. They were guidelines, and they were in your packet. They're called the temporary extension of premises, the outdoor dining area on private property or parking lots. And we were doing this in response to the recovery and the reopening for businesses within Massachusetts. So as many of you know, the state have outlined guidelines for reopening, and part of that has included socially distanced space for restaurants, that they've encouraged them to be outdoors. So Andy Ungerson, Susan, Kristin Cochrane, and then from our police department, Jerry McDonough and Mike Hannafin from the fire department have all worked as kind of a task force reviewing these. In the process, we've talked to the planning board, and Barbara, our chairman, Barbara LaRue, had some additional concerns about our guidelines. So we, reviewed those. She proposed some additional ideas that the planning board on Thursday approved. Now, in your packet, the revised guidelines and requirements, I'm going to hold these up versus doing a screen share, so I'll probably do that. Included the recommendations. And what I'd like to do, if it's okay, Chairman Morandi, is review the changes together. Is that okay?
Absolutely, yes. It's a good idea. Thank you.
So just to call out the differences that are being proposed on, and what we'd like you to do is consider approving these updated versions, the updated version. So number one, beyond guidelines, we'd like to add requirements to this for the businesses. And this would include primarily the protective barriers. I'm going to be reading D right here. Under the submittal for the application, we're asking restaurants to provide protective barriers around new outdoor seating if the seating is within a parking lot or roadway. We're recommending that the music or actually requiring the music or television noise to be kept to a minimum in businesses that are within 200 feet of residential areas. This is located on the second page. We'd also like to ask that the restaurants require reservations when possible, just to avoid the waiting and the gathering. And we have talked to different businesses or restaurants about this. They said that that would be acceptable, and generally speaking, and that we should put a timeline, suggest a time limit on dinner tables, just to help them, encourage them to turn over their tables. But that's just a recommendation that the businesses can choose to use. So those have been included in the update that we'd like to accept kind of as we go forward with our applications for temporary or outdoor seating. I don't know if that was clear enough. It's a little awkward on the screen. Sorry about that.
It's okay. That's all good. Thank you, Melissa. Paul, anything to add right now before I say something?
The only thing I wanted to add, Mr. Chairman, is this team's really done a great job. The requests are coming out of staff is curious, and I think that they've really done yeoman's work to get a lot of restaurants up and running very quickly. And I think that this is a living document, so I think it's subject to future change. All of these recommendations is temporary. The whole situation is temporary, and I think it's as we move forward, we may want to adjust it again based upon new information. But I think that the team is really working hard to try to strike that perfect balance in trying to help businesses get open quickly, but at the same time, maintaining, again, quality and safety standards for the customers that frequent these businesses. And that's all I'd like to say, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. So, gentlemen, before I put this out there, there was a lot of work done on this. Melissa, outstanding job with this, with everything that went through, with all the suggestions that came in, and you talking to the businesses and having our meetings over the phone or whichever way it was. Once again, I just want to say thanks for all your professionalism during this whole time. Gentlemen, as far as we're concerned, this is temporary. This isn't going to be the new norm. We'll get back to where we once were. It may be time, but all these things are just temporary. And if you looked at the package close enough, some are required from the state, which we're doing. And then the other ones are recommended. They're recommended. That's a huge word in this issue right here. They're recommended from us. That doesn't mean you can walk into a restaurant and say like, hey, that's supposed to be. It's not. It's recommended. We want these guys up and running. We want these people to start to get people in their restaurants and making money again. And we'll feel the effects of this next year. So I hope you looked at this long and hard. And I'm going to go from that point on, and we're going to start taking questions for Melissa at this point. Nick, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Listen, I don't really have any questions. Well, I guess the one question I have is, do we have a definition around the protective barriers? Like, I mean, is there a range of, I mean, obviously we're not going to ask every restaurant to bring in jersey barriers to protect patrons, right?
Protective barriers, we did not define them. We've been really encouraging jersey barriers when they are to date, I would say, and we have pushed the restaurants that have been able to do that to provide the jersey barriers, especially when they're in areas that are typically used for cars, parking lots, and such. So I think we're giving it to the businesses to be responsible that, the protective barriers are significant to protect their patrons.
Okay. The only other thing I'd like to add is that, I think that restaurants are trying to keep their turnovers as tight as possible, regardless of our 90-minute recommendation. I think that's, a bit unnecessary on our part. They want to turn business and, keep things moving. I'm not going to, hold anything up this evening. I think that otherwise this document is hopefully be very, very helpful, in our efforts to kind of get things back up and running here in town. I appreciate your and everyone on the task force, efforts in doing so. And I hope that, the chamber and the restaurants, are also, ready to kind of get things back up and running. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike. Mr. Runyon? Can anybody hear him, or he's not?
No, he's on mute.
He's on mute.
Mike, you out there yet? Okay, we'll go to Jimmy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Melissa,
Yes.
quick question on I think it was the second point,
Yes.
reservations when required, or what was the wording on that one again?
Restaurants should require reservations whenever possible to reduce the possibility of patrons gathering while waiting for tables.
Okay, it's just a little wordy. A little wordy for me, so I just needed to clarify that. But just to follow up on what Nick's point was, or question was regarding barriers, obviously immovable barriers are the best, but what I've seen other restaurants doing in this meantime is put firewood or stuff like that out to separate, to put a physical barrier between the parking lot where the cars park and where they're seating. So anything that they would utilize in their business, if they use wood in their ovens or whatnot, maybe they could store that stuff or dumpsters. No, not dumpsters. They don't want to sit next to a dumpster. But anything that they utilize in their business that's can be used as a protective barrier, I'd encourage them to use, whatever they have to create that physical barrier.
Yes, that's what our task force has been doing. Andy, I don't know if you want to speak to that, but there are protective barriers, or not only Jersey barriers, that have been used kind of across the state as people have been rolling this out.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, sir.
On every application, it's been a heavy recommendation made by Officer McDonough, Captain Hanna from the fire department, ourselves, is to make sure that the patrons are protected, so that in many of these areas where they're putting the seating, it's near or along an area where traffic will flow for other people coming and going into these establishments. We've not made a point to say that they have to use a concrete Jersey barrier. We are looking for some form of obstacle that will accept or handle potentially a vehicle blow enough for that driver to acknowledge that they need to stop or slow down and protect the people on the other side from accidentally getting injured. So we're not making a point to a particular product to use, but to use something which would give the most safety to the patrons. The wood piles that Selectman Tigas recommended, absolutely. But we've made points to lead some of these people into direction where they can get barriers. Even the town has made offer to supply some barriers to some of our smaller restaurants that may have a hard time either renting, purchasing, or getting their hands on them. So we are making the point to heavily just to protect the people who are going into these establishments on the outside of the buildings.
All right. Thank you, Andy. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I was just thinking along as Andy was speaking, even if they, I don't want to do their, I'm not saying, I don't want to not do their, I don't want to speak for them, but even if they parked their cars, the employee cars between where they sit and where the traffic is, anything that they have in their possession that they can use would definitely be helpful to create that barrier.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, to respond to Selectman Tigas, yes, Jim, you're correct. We are recommending when we see our plans coming in that any areas of parking which are near to where they're seated, that these areas be designated for their employees, knowing that they're going to be there first throughout the day and through the time of operation, that the cars themselves could be used as a barrier to protect the people seated in their expanded patio area.
Great, so we're on the same page. Good. I'm all
Yes,
set,
sir.
Mr. Chairman.
You're all set?
Yes.
We got an email from Mr. Runyon, said he had no questions. So at this point, we'll just bring it to a vote. I need a motion.
No, I didn't talk yet.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bob.
Oh, yeah.
Thought you were first.
It's
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Bob.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Melissa,
Yes.
Right now, you're on mute.
okay, I'm hearing other people talk. I'm sorry, Melissa, when you started out and you talked about a requirement about the protective barriers, could you go over the wording where it says in a parking lot or something like that? Would you clarify that?
Sure. So under the first page, under required documents under the plan, and it's under section D, it's saying restaurants must provide protective barriers around any new outdoor seating if the seating is within a parking lot or roadway.
Okay, then what about restaurants? And I'm going to use one particular one, the Sweet Ginger, where they're right on the sidewalk, right where the cars are being parked, but they're not in the parking lot. Does the Sweet Ginger have to have barriers?
That would be no, given that they don't have to have Jersey barriers. We want to encourage them to provide, railing or mark the area, but they wouldn't have to put protective barriers on the parking, in the parking lot, if you see what I mean. I think the curb, we've determined the curb serves as a bumper because that has traditionally been the stopping point for the vehicles in that area.
Okay, another question. As far as the music goes, it says 200 feet from a residence. Having spent a few minutes driving around, especially down on 3rd Ave, where the customers of one restaurant are literally 6 feet from the customers of another restaurant, I would say that, especially now that indoor seating has been allowed, the work we've done over the years allowing music in restaurants should stand and then not have in outdoor, because very few restaurants are within 200 feet of another of residents, but are overlapping each other. And I also think that if you want to turn over the tables every 90 minutes, not having music for people to sit and enjoy when they have yet another drink is counterproductive. So I would recommend to the board and to the other members that maybe we should not allow any music outside. I also didn't see in there, I talked about having reservations for people, so there's no gatherings outside, but I didn't see anywhere where it said no alcohol shall be served until you are seated. Now, if that's under one of the state wordings, I'll stand corrected.
So the alcohol serving must be at a seated table outdoors. So that
Okay.
is covered in the state guidelines.
Okay.
As for the music, Chairman Morandi, I'd leave that up to you as in terms of how to propose it to the selectmen.
Well, the only way you can propose it, go ahead. Yes, Mr. Sagarino.
The only thing I wanted to add on, just for clarification on that, Selectman Logan, is that it wasn't intended to add any additional music. I think some of the restaurants that had outside patios existing already had the ability to sort of, whatever music was playing inside the restaurant sort of pipes through outside already, or it would, pre-COVID. So I don't think that, what we were allowing was any additional, music being played outside, as you had recommended, that we don't allow for any outside entertainment. I think that the music is essentially from the pre-existing speaker system that would have been playing already for on the outside patio area, even if we weren't in sort of this, the COVID situation. I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, all right, but I would like to at least have an opportunity, if it is an issue for other surrounding restaurants, that somebody's music is overlapping, that maybe we can address that. Or Andy could.
I think at this point here that if the music is overlapping, I think that we would get a call from somebody complaining about it, and I think
All
that's when we'd take care of that issue at that point.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, now I didn't miss anybody again, right? I did let everyone speak except for Mike because he left a message here. So we're going to need a motion and a second on this.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion. We accept the recommendations of Economic Development Director. And I'll just leave it as a motion at this point.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Nick. Okay, here we go. Sorry, Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Mr. Runyon.
Yes.
Hey, back. Mr. Tigas,
Yes.
Mr. Priest,
Yes.
Mr. Morandi. Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
could I ask Melissa to give us an update at an upcoming meeting to see how this is going?
Could you? No. No, just kidding. Yeah, you can.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you, Melissa.
absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right. And
So
what?
Melissa, you understood, wants an update? He wants an update on our next meeting?
Well, just a
Yes.
status to see how this is going.
All right.
I'm happy to give a status and we can report on everyone who we've sent letters to. And I can give you at least anecdotal reports from the businesses in terms of how things are going, because I think the next phase, as you can see, things are kind of evolving always. And the next question a lot of people have on their mind is with the interior seating being allowed, how will that play out? So I'll be happy to come back with a report on that.
Great.
Thank you very much. Okay. We're all set with that. Mr. Sagarino, back to you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight we have representatives from the Friends of the Landlocked Forest to discuss some routine trail maintenance they wish to do in partnership with the New England Mountain Biking Association.
Yes.
I believe we have Ms. Simon here and Mr. Cohn.
Yes.
And we also have our Conservation Director, John Keely, here to answer any questions the board may have related to this project. So with that, I guess I will turn it over to Mr. Simon.
Sure, yes. I also want to mention that another member of the Friends of the Landlocked Forest and of Greater Boston NEMBA, the New England Mountain Biking Association, Ed Parsons, is also in attendance tonight and may be able to help with our comments. Thank you for having us tonight. As Mr. Sagarino mentioned, a lot of what we've come is for sort of routine maintenance. The Friends of the Landlocked Forest and the New England Mountain Biking Association have worked in partnership since the topic of the landlocked forest came into public view 10 or 15 years ago. They've been an incredible partner with us. They've brought expertise and tools when we've provided perhaps materials and some volunteers to help. They helped us create the wonderful marked trails that we have now and the boardwalks that allow people to traverse the wetlands without danger to ruining the wetlands or to themselves getting wet and muddy. So we really appreciate them working with us. And Bill Cohen, as you mentioned, is here tonight representing Greater Boston NEMBA. We did send some information in advance for the select board, but just for people who are listening who don't know what's happening, each year there are trail maintenance kinds of things that have to happen. New tree growth, fallen trees, safety issues come up. Some of the trails get widened and we try to make sure they don't get too wide. And in some years, and unfortunately this year, people decide they want to make their own trails. They don't get permission from the Board of Selectmen. And they're often, and in this case, this year, ecologically quite damaging to the environment in the forest. So there are three trails that were unauthorized that we'd like to try to close. So there are three things that we want to do. It's called a light snip and clip, overhanging branches, trail side growth, to allow people as they walk by or as they ride by on bikes to be able to travel without those kinds of interferences. I mean, there is a little bit of poison ivy in a few areas. There are some prickly plants that come along, and so those help keep it a usable recreation area for us. We will be using hand trimmers and loppers for that kind of work. And in terms of the trails that have gotten a bit too wide, we're going to try to do what's called pinch in, and I appreciate the NEMBA people for giving me the right terminology for these things. And that helps reduce the ecological impact of the trail use, and it promotes the growth of the plants and animals habitats in the forest, and try to make it look natural, not just put branches in the way kind of thing. And then finally, shutting down the road trails by filling the trail entrances in ways that make it look more undisturbed. The work that will be done maintaining social distancing. There'll be groups of no more than 5 at a time. And for these projects, it will only be using hand tools. So if people have questions, please let us know. Oh, actually, Ed Parsons, do you have anything you wanted to add to that introduction? If you don't mind, Mr. Chair, for me to ask him.
Nope, go right ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't have much to add besides the materials, but I just want to express my support for the work that NEMBA and the Friends of the Landlocked Forest have done for a number of years. As a resident of Burlington and a member of town meeting, I enjoy the forest and I help out with some of that work. And I think it's a great benefit that the town gets for free.
Okay, thank you. So at this point, Martha, I just want to go over dates real quick with you right now. What were the dates again? Because I don't have them in front of me, to be honest with you.
Yeah, Bill, could you answer that? I don't think we have dates yet. I think we were waiting to get the authorization.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, but we have teams that we can pull together. For example, any evening, perhaps Thursday evening, it used to be our social ride. We're not doing that right now because of COVID. We could still pull together the small groups to do this type of work, even as soon as this Thursday.
So my question is, are we talking summertime or are we talking fall?
Well, there is maintenance to be done in the fall as well. Right now, we're mostly concerned with the overgrowth. And we want to, which is very current.
Okay, that's fantastic. Mr. Keeley, question. You're on mute, so.
Okay.
Okay, good. John, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, very good. Thank you. Have you looked at these snippings and clippings and hairdressing stuff they're going to be doing in there?
I have not gone out and looked at it, but these are basically routine trail maintenance activities and land management activities. You have to keep a trail open by cutting brush, certainly all the winter blowdowns and stuff. So it's really pretty routine work.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to get your opinion before I went out to the board and asked the other one. For me personally, I have no problem with this whatsoever. I think it's fantastic that everyone gets to use the landlocked forest as far as, and Martha knows when I say everybody, I mean everybody. We all use it. It's a great asset up there. And I'm going to move right along to our board right now and ask them questions. We'll start with Michael. Mr. Runyon.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, it sounds like a well-planned, well-organized, coordinated effort. I have no issues with this.
Thank you very much. Mr. Tiggs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Martha or Bill, how many people do you think would be out there at any given moment?
I said 5.
Well, as I said, the trail crews wouldn't be any more than 5 people, and they would practice social distancing. And Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm assuming that anybody closer than 6 to 10 feet would be using a mask. Is that accurate?
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the same. We do that as riding as well. We have masks on when we get close, when we can't social distance. Yeah.
Okay.
In this case, we might have 2 groups of 5 to be clear going out, but we keep them separated.
Well, that was my question was, are all 5 people going to be one area? Are you going to have different groups spread throughout, or is it just going to be 5 at a time? Or?
I think we'd probably, to do it efficiently, probably send them one to the north end and one to the south end of the parcel.
All right.
Just separate them so we can get it done.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Priest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No questions. I just want to take a moment and thank everybody for their efforts. When you have an area like we do, Landlocked Forest, it's always great to see, volunteers and, folks stepping forward to help maintain it so that folks can continue using it. And it really is an asset to town. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Mr. Hogan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has been a good working relationship over the years, and I want to thank all of them also for all the work they do to keep this area clean. So I have no questions, and I certainly support it.
Thank you very much. One quick question I do have. Who can answer this for me? Any one of you. How are the ticks? How are the ticks this year?
I'm sorry, I don't.
The ticks.
Oh.
The little buggers that climb up your legs and bite you and get on your back and behind.
They were pretty bad earlier in the season, and particularly there's a meadow there that seems to.
Yep.
Every time you go through it, you get some ticks. So we certainly recommend tick checking and washing immediately afterwards. I know most of the riders do exactly that.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering how they were. They were pretty bad during hunting season this year. They were in areas I've never seen them before. Like, what are they doing over here? So they're traveling. They're like a band of gypsies right now. But anyway, gentlemen, we'll go to a motion, and would anybody like to make a motion on this?
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chairman, that we support and approve the recommendations of the work being done on the landlocked land.
Motion by Bob, second by Mr. Priest. Here we go, gentlemen. Mr. Hogan.
Yes.
Mr. Runyon.
Yes.
Mr. Tigas.
Yes.
Mr. Priest.
Yes.
Mr. Morandi. Yes. There you go. You're all set.
Great. Can I just make one request? Would you like us to report either to Mr. Sagarino or to Mr. Keeley when the dates are known of which dates they're going out, or should we just report when it's all done?
That's a really good thing. I would love to know when you're going out there. And there could be a possibility that I might show up. I don't know.
Yeah.
Depends on what time of day and the night it is. Okay. All right. That would be great. That would be awesome.
So should we report
Mr. Sagarino, send it to Mr. Sagarino, or you can just send it directly to me on my town email.
Okay. So report, and it may be, I know with the groups getting together, it may be very short notice because people, depending on when they have time.
Okay.
We'll send that information to Mr. Sagarino. Okay, is that Mr. Cohen? You got good with that?
Yes.
Great. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Martha, I'm sure Joe can help with the snip and clip part.
Absolutely.
Sorry, who can?
I'm sure Mr. Morandi can help with the snip and clip.
Yes, right.
My barber skills will come into hands sooner or later.
Excellent. Thank you all for your support. Appreciate
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Sagarino, public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to sort of break these down, we have public hearings that we will be requesting that will be continued. Those are the 2 that we've been working with, Burlington Beer Works and Del Frisco. So, and then we have a couple of additional liquor public hearings that are new to the board that we'll be listening to the proponents on. So just to give you a heads up of what's coming up. The first one is number 428, public hearing on Del Frisco's liquor license. The attorney for Del Frisco's did reach out to us and let us know. I think we all know there's not a lot of activity going on in town right now. They've been unable to find a suitor for that liquor license, and we will ask that this be continued to meeting. Betty, I will ask you to please chime in for the date and the time on this one for one of our meetings in October prior to liquor license renewal.
Yes, I'm thinking the second meeting in October. Can you help me on the date on that? I don't have my calendar.
1 second.
26th.
What's that?
John said October 26th.
October 26th at 6:30. Mr. Devlin, would that work for you?
Yes, it would. Thank you. That work?
Thank you, Mr. Devlin. Thank you, Attorney Devlin.
I'm right now.
So gentlemen, that is for Frisco Grill. At that October date, please, October 26th, I believe, at 6:30.
Both at 30?
A motion to continue, Mr. Chairman, if that's what the board so desires.
I was going in and out. So I got a motion from Bob, second by Mike. Gonna stand up over there. At this point, we'll go right down the list again. Mr. Hogan?
Okay, question. Are we just doing Del Frisco's first? Or are we doing both Beer Works and Del Frisco's?
Just Beer Works, I believe.
Just Del Frisco.
All right.
Yeah, Del Frisco's.
Yes, for October 26th at 6:30.
Mr. Runyon?
Yes.
Mr. Tigas?
Yes.
Mr. Priest?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda, yes. Okay, Betty, there you go. Mr.
Thank you.
Sagarino, next one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Same situation on this one. This is Slesser Brothers Brewing Company, the Burlington Beer Works. Attorney Sporn did reach out to us with an update, and again, we're dealing with the pandemic situation. It's not exactly a great time to be in the market to sell a liquor license. So we wish to continue this one, if the board so desires, to October 26th at 6:35, I believe they had said. Hopefully that works for you, Attorney Sporn.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right, I'll make the motion for Burlington Beer Works to be continued to October 26th at 6:35 PM.
Second by Mike again. We'll stop to vote again. Mr. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Runyon?
Yes.
Mr. Tigas?
Yes.
Mr. Priest?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda, yes. Okay, there you go.
Thank you, attorneys, for popping in.
Thank you, Betty. Thank you, Chairman Morandi and members of the board.
Welcome, thank you. How are you?
Doing okay.
Good, that's a good thing.
I need a haircut though. Maybe you could, I didn't know you could help with haircuts.
Absolutely. Come on down, my friend.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's see, Mr. Sagarino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next item is a liquor licensing authority item related to Wegmans. And I'm not sure who's here to present on this one.
That's me again, Joe Devlin.
Mr. Devlin. I think we're going to need a member to read the public hearing notice and, a vote to open the public hearing and just alert Nick and Betty to keep an eye out for comments on it.
Sure. And it's the first item in your packet, gentlemen. You want me to read it, Paul?
Yes, Betty, please.
Hereby given under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 138, that an online WebEx public hearing will be held on Monday, June 22, 2020. I'm going to mute everybody. at or after 6:30 p.m. to consider the application for approval of a change of ownership interest for an annual package store all alcohol beverages license for Wegmans, Massachusetts, Inc., doing business as Wegmans, located at 53 3rd Avenue, Burlington, Massachusetts. All relative supporting information and documentation is available for public inspection on the town's website. Wegmans change of interest under the Burlington Selectmen website page. Thank you, that's it.
Betty. Mr. Devlin.
You're muted.
Are you muted? Mr. Devlin?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'll show Mr. Sporn some hair that needs to be cut. It hasn't been cut since 6 months. So I might take you up on it, but this is largely an administrative procedure. And nothing's changing at the locations. Dan and his daughter Colleen Wegman owned 50.5% and 49.5% respectively of the parent company of Wegmans, Massachusetts, Inc. Through some estate planning, they've both taken their shares and put it into the Wegmans Family Trust for the benefit of Colleen and Nicole, who are Danny's two daughters and his lineal descendants. He's the trustee. So in effect, he's got all the power and control over the shares. It has no effect on the operations of the business. There's 8 licenses affected. We're 2 away from being able to do it as an inverted process. 6 package stores and 2 restaurants. I've been to Natick, Newton, Northborough, Westwood, and Medford, and the investigators submitted Newton on Thursday for approval by the full commission at the ABCC. So this is already being processed up to the ABCC as well. There's no changes in the operations of the Burlington Wegmans.
Thank you. We'll go around the horn here. Mr. Hogan. Bob?
Muted.
Are you muted?
No, yes, I was. I would support this and just hope and say a silent prayer that these kind of things don't happen like it happened with the Demoulas family.
Thank you. Mr. Runyon.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. No questions on the application.
Mr. Tiggis.
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Priest.
No questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I have no questions also. So at this point, we'll probably just need a motion. Mr. Sagarino?
Mr. Chairman, can you please open up the public hearing?
Oh, you're right.
And we can check in to see if there's any comments. That's a little tricky part of these virtual meetings. So if we could just ask Nick and Betty to take a look to see if we have any comments on Facebook. And I'm monitoring the phone lines here. It's not ringing yet, so.
Okay.
You could just ask the board to open up the public hearing with a roll call vote.
So I'd like to open up the public hearing at this point. Need a motion in a second to open it, and then I'll go through the vote. By Jimmy. Mr. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Runyon?
Yes.
Mr. Tiggis?
Yes.
Mr. Priest?
Yes.
Mr. Miranda, yes. So the public hearing is open at this point. Betty, do we have anything? Paul? Nick?
I'm looking at the chat. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm looking at the chat for the WebEx, and there's nothing.
Nothing here on Facebook, Mr. Chairman.
Paul, your phone ringing?
No, sir. No phone calls to the office at this point.
Okay. How long do we? Yes, Mr. Runyon.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Ready? Mr. Hogan.
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Tigas,
Yes.
Mr. Priest,
Yes.
Mr. Miranda, yes. Motion made, second, and voted on, close the public hearing. Now I'll need a motion to pass this or deny it, whatever way. Just need a motion.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we approve the change in paperwork that we have just been presented with.
A motion made by Bob, second by Nick, and we'll start this way. Mr. Priest,
Yes.
Mr. Tigas,
Yes.
Mr. Runyon,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Randy, yes. 500.
Thank you, Attorney Devlin. We will get that up to the ABCC for you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Betty. It's glad to see you all health and safety safe. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
You too, Joe. Good night.
No.
Mr. Sagarino, moving right along.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next liquor licensing activity relates to Rondana. And Betty, would you mind reading the public hearing notice, and then we can sort of vote to open up that discussion, and same process as on the last one. And Attorney Vaughn is here, I believe, to be presenting.
Just give me a minute. I have to pull it up. Thank you for your patience. Notice is hereby given under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 138, that an online WebEx public hearing will be held Monday, June 22, 2020, at or after 6:36. Consider the application for approval of a change of ownership interest for an annual package store or alcohol license, and that's the wrong one. So let's try that again.
Thank you, Betty.
Excuse that. Thank you. Excuse me. Notice hereby given that an online WebEx public hearing will be held on Monday, June 22, at 2020 at or after 6:45 p.m. Consider the application for a change to the manager of record, alteration of premises, and change of doing business as from Burlington Hospitality Llc, doing business as Landana Grill, to Burlington Hospitality Llc, doing business as Move M0 Burlington, on the all alcohol license for premises located at 826 Cambridge Street in Burlington, Mass. With the alteration of premises to include a redesign of internal operations, to redefine the main seating area and expand private dining and cafe dining with a reduction in the total number of seating, with request as allowed for Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 138. All of the relative supporting documentation was made available for public inspection on the town's website. Thank you. If you would like, I can read the comments from the different departments.
Yes.
Is that okay, Mr. Chair? Okay. Building department has no objections to the proposed alteration, remodel of 86 Cambridge Street, also known as Landana. The fire department, Captain Michael Cannabin, the fire department has no concerns or objections to the proposed alteration of premises and change of doing business as at 86 Cambridge Street. Planning department, Kristin Cochrane has no concerns unless the approved seating count or site is altered. Police Chief Michael Kent, no issues with the police department, and the Board of Health, Susan Luminello, no issues with the Board of Health. That's the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sagarino, any comments?
I don't have any comments at this point, Chairman Morandi, and maybe we could turn it over to Attorney Vaughn for his
Yes.
presentation.
Yep. Mr. Vaughn.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman and
Good evening.
members of the board. It's Pleasure to see you all, albeit virtually, remotely here, but you all look well, and I hope your families are doing well through these challenging times. So pleased to be before you tonight on behalf of the applicant, Burlington Hospitality LLC. We have Shannon St. Pierre, who is the listed general manager proposed here as well, along with Patrick Shockey, who is the architect for the project. But I think you're all familiar with Landana Restaurant, obviously at 86 Cambridge Street. They've been at that location for, I think, about 15 plus years. Very much have enjoyed their relationship with the town through the years, and, you know, in my opinion, have distinguished themselves as one of the premier restaurants in the suburban Boston area. However, as quite often the case in the restaurant industry, where it's critical to adapt, evolve, and refresh the concept when necessary, the owners are desirous of making some changes to the interior layout of the restaurant, as well as rebranding the concept as Moo Restaurant. For those that might not be familiar with Moo Restaurant, but the owners of Landana also own that concept, which is located in Boston currently. Paul Royf and Jamie Mamano, the executive chef. It's an award-winning, critically acclaimed restaurant that's actually located on Beacon Street at the 15 Beacon Hotel, and they've been there for several years. So they're excited about bringing that same model and concept here to the Burlington location. So as part of that, they're looking to modify the interior layout of the restaurant to refresh and energize it a bit. Primarily the changes from what you might be familiar with if you went there before, but when you walk in, they're looking to modify that existing cafe, dining, bar area where you first enter the restaurant, open that area up a bit, provide for a more casual, inviting dining atmosphere. Can feel a little bit closed in currently at times, so I think they wanted to open that up a bit. And there, the other side of the restaurant, where the function room is today, they would modify that as well to provide for 3 smaller function rooms, which would span that side of the building. So they're not looking to expand the physical footprint of the building or the number of seats. In fact, the number of seats would actually be reduced slightly from the last approved plan that this board had approved some years ago. Seat count would go from 270 down to 254, as shown on the submitted floor plan. So Shannon St. Pierre is here, and she is the listed general manager. She has a great deal of experience in the restaurant industry, and at this location specifically, having served as the director of marketing at Landana for many years. Familiar with the Burlington alcohol rules and regulations as well, and understands that how important it is to appropriately and responsibly manage a restaurant like this. So I think it's pretty straightforward. I think, you know, personally, I'm excited about, you know, it's a challenging industry right now, obviously, but I think they're committed to it and want to see it succeed for its next chapter here. So with that, Mr. Chairman, be happy to answer any questions, or if you have any comments for anyone, please to try to answer.
Absolutely. I'm sure there's some questions out there on a few items, I would imagine at this point. So we'll start the questioning off with Mr. Segas.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, I don't have any questions at this time.
I'm going to need a minute because I can't believe he doesn't have any questions. So
I think we should just move on. So.
Give me a second, will you? If there are any questions. Here we go. Nick, do you have any questions? Mr. Priest?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I do not. So thank you.
You guys are killing me. Seriously. All right. Mr. Hogan.
Not so much a question as, well, yeah, I do have one question, and I know obviously that the menu is going to be changing, but Ms. St. Pierre, will a fair amount of the Italian menu still be available?
We're still working out those specifics and haven't firmed up the menu items. I mean, I think we're still going to try to do some signature, items that people have really loved to enjoyed. We're just going to, kind of spin it a little bit and freshen it up, I think. I definitely, hope that we keep a few things, but I don't think the chef has firmed up all of the menu items yet.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Runyon.
Okay, I was gonna, my questions, you know, Lindana's been a good corporate neighbor for many years here in Burlington. And I was just curious, however, though, so the name will change from Lindana to Moo, is that correct?
That is accurate.
Okay, and you already answered the question regarding the menu.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mike, if I could, not to interject, but it's the same ownership that's staying
Right.
here. So the same attention
Right.
to quality that you've seen. It's, you know, Paul and Jamie Mamano are staying on. So, yeah.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you very much. What's the time frame on this?
Well, we spoke about that as a team earlier in the day, anticipating that question. But the desire is to be able to get this done soon over the summer months. And I don't know, Patrick Sharkey, maybe you have a better handle on, you know, when you might be finished and ready to open. But the expectation is to get it underway quickly. So.
Okay. I was just wondering how long it was gonna actually be. You're gonna close completely down, redo the whole thing aside, and then
Right.
reopen as moved.
Correct.
Right, okay, that's easy. I have to open it up to the public, gentlemen. I need a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we open up the public hearing.
Motion by Jimmy, second by Mike. You ready, gentlemen? Mr. Hogan?
Only some direction. Mark, are we taking 3 votes on this tonight for the change of manager, the transfer of the license, and management changes, something like that?
That's a good question, Mr. Hogan. I don't know historically how Mr. Sagarino has handled that, whether that's one motion or needs to be broken up, but.
Paul, what do you want to do, Paul?
I'll defer to Betty's judgment on this. She's been at it much longer than I have. But whatever way is.
Absolutely. That's fine. Do we have any objections to any of the changes before us tonight?
No.
No.
Any changes or alterations or anything, and you're satisfied with this? Yes, she has a wonderful resume, and you submitted everything we need. I would recommend that we do a motion to approve the alteration of premises as submitted, with the reduction in seating from 278 to 254, and the change in the doing business as from Landana to Moose, and then the change of manager, please.
So could I have that as a motion, gentlemen?
I think we have to close the public.
Not yet. We have to close the public hearing.
You gotta open it first, right?
Right, one at a time.
We just did.
Stop. One at a time. Thank you very much. Mr. Tigas, what did you just say?
Well, I said we have to close the public hearing, and Paul said that we have to open it first.
We
We have
never
to-
opened it. We never opened the public
Right, we
hearing.
have to open it by a vote.
Yes. And that's when Mr. Hogan stepped in. He wanted to know if we've taken 1 vote or 3 votes. So
Okay.
What did we do at that point? Betty said we suggest we could do all
Right
3
now,
votes.
yeah, right now, Mr. Chairman, I want you to close the public hearing, and make sure that there's
I
no
did not
comments from the
open-
public.
We didn't open the public
Yeah, you
hearing.
did. All
We
right,
didn't vote
whatever.
on it.
Okay.
We never voted on it. Mr. Sagarino, did we vote on this?
I don't believe we did. I think you went to Selectman Hogan and he asked this question and we sort of got off track from actually opening
Yes.
the public hearing. That's how I recall.
That's what I remember.
Yep. Okay, I'm sorry.
Chairman, I make a motion, we open the public hearing.
Motion is seconded. So, Bob. Vote. Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Mr. Runyon,
Yes.
Mr. Tigas,
Yes.
Mr. Priest,
Yes.
Mr. Miranda, yes. So the public hearing is now open. We'll have to wait a second and see if Mr. Priest or Betty or Mr. Sagarino will get any calls.
I do have one quick question while we're waiting for that minute, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mark, is Burlington Hospitality the holder of the alcohol license, or is it Landana or Moose?
So I understand it, Mr. Hogan, it's Burlington Hospitality LLC, and they would be doing business as Moo Restaurant.
So that would be part of the doing business as vote that we take.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So at this time, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Mr. Chairman, before we do that, we actually do have one question on our Facebook Live feed from a very own Rich Hosford. He's asking when the last day for people to eat at La and Donna will be.
I don't think we can.
I don't think we clearly know when we'll begin renovations, but our outdoor patio is open and accepting reservations right now. So come on down. We'd love to see you.
Yeah.
Good answer.
Gonna move on, Rich.
Well, I think as the board knows too, I mean, as the local liquor license authority, your approval still would require the ABCC approval. So there's a little bit of time lag there. But to Shannon's point, I think they are open and still providing the quality meals and service that they always have for. So.
And excited to see our guests. We were very excited to see them last week. It's nice to see some faces.
Absolutely. Okay. So that was the only one we had, Mr. Hostler? Anybody else? Betty? Paul? Nothing? Okay. I need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
So moved. Mr.
Second.
Hogan. Motion made and seconded. Mr. Hogan?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Tigas?
Yes.
Mr. Priest? Mr. Priest?
No.
Yep, I heard a yes.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes.
Okay. Myself, yes. So 5-0, Betty in favor. Well, good luck and congratulations. Hope it,
Thank you so much,
works out
Mr. Chairman and the board.
Well,
Be taking the vote
you gotta
on the three
vote
motions.
on the matter. That was just a close.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we approve as one vote the alteration of premise, the doing business as Moo's, and the change of the manager to Shannon St. Pierre.
Second,
Second.
Tigas. Okay, here we go, boys. Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Mr. Runyon,
Yes.
Mr. Priest,
Yes.
Mr. Tigas,
Yes.
Mr. Miranda, yes. There you go. Now it's all
Thank-
voted in. Motions are
Thank you.
done, public's closed, everything's all set. Good luck.
Thank
Thanks
you
very
so much,
much.
Mr. Chairman and the board.
Thank you.
Continued
Thank you.
good health to all of you. All right.
You
Take
too.
care. Thanks.
Take care.
Thank you, Mark.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you very much. Okay. Betty, we're gonna do the minutes. Can we do them all in one motion, or would you like them separately? Mr. Stagarino?
Mr. Chairman, could I just bring up, we do have one emergency item for tonight's meeting.
Absolutely.
It's a very routine matter, and it's really of a timely nature for a resident in town. I'm one of the owners of one of the affordable housing units in town. Has the ability to refinance their current mortgage. It's been reviewed by Jim Doherty, our housing coordinator, and we would have postponed it to the next board meeting, but I believe that would completely mess up our residents' process for refinancing their loan. So what we wanted to ask the board permission for this evening, if you'd be willing to approve that. And again, it's been reviewed by the town housing coordinator. A person already owns a unit in town, and as everybody knows, there's very favorable interest rates now. So the person is interested in refinancing their existing loan, and they need the board's permission to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Stagarino. So would you like us to vote on this public, is it a public hearing we have to do, or is it just a?
It's not a public hearing, it's just an agenda item, and again, we would not, it was just brought to our attention today, and when we looked at the due date for the closing of the loan, our next meeting would not suffice in order to get that done, so we wanted to see if we could get this moving along for the residents this evening.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, based on the fact that Mr. Doherty has been informed and has gone through this and supports it, I would feel comfortable making a motion to approve this.
Okay, that's the motion. Do I have a second? Second by Jimmy. Thank you. All right, gentlemen. Mr. Hogan,
Yes?
Mr. Runyon,
Yes.
Mr. Tigas,
Yes.
Mr. Priest,
Yes.
Mr. Morandi, yes. There you go, 5-0-0.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your willingness to support this resident in this endeavor. Appreciate it.
That's good. It's good for the residents. Okay, now, the approval of the minutes. Betty, would you like us to do them separately or all at once?
Well, I think the April 6th one we'll do separately, and then May 11th's already been done. And then just May 18 and 28 will be done together.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
If I may, I actually spoke to our recording clerk regarding the minutes of April 6th, and there were some amendments made to those minutes. So I just wanted to put that on the record that April 6th minutes were amended.
Okay.
They were amended to reflect a correction that Jim Tigas' vote.
So it was amended just about your vote, Jimmy?
Yeah, that's correct. One of the items said 5-0, but and then it also mentioned I abstained. So you can't do both, but it was a 5-0 vote.
Okay.
I did not abstain from that one.
All right. So April 6th, 2020 special session, do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to we approve them as amended.
As amended.
Second.
Correct.
Okay, gentlemen. Mr. Runyon,
Yes.
Mr. Tigas,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Mr. Priest,
Yes.
Mr. Morandi, yes. The 18th and 28th.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Mr. Priest,
Yes.
Mr. Tigas,
Yes.
Mr. Runyon,
Yes.
Mr. Morandi, yes. Okay, there we go. Those are all set. So we are now doing old business, new business. Is Mr. Runyon, anything?
Under old business, new business? No, sir.
Yep. Mr. Tigas? Under old
Nothing.
business?
Nothing under old or new. I do have a subcommittee report though when time is ready.
Mr. Hogan,
No, I do not.
Mr. Priest,
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to bring up and ask the board's vote on timing around the Sculpture Park Committee's need to begin to have sculpture installations and openings, if you will, unveilings. I figured it'd be more appropriate to do this under new old business than it would be the subcommittee type thing. There's not a report. But the ask here from the Sculpture Park Committee is to have the Board of Selectmen provide permission for them to basically do an unveiling every roughly 2 weeks between now and, let's say, September, so they can get all 6 sculptures in place. And so, through the chairman, I put that to the board.
thank you very much. Let's start out with some questions. Mr. Runyon, any questions on this?
No questions. I did sort of hear through the grapevine though that they were requesting our assistance in pouring some concrete pads and our ability to lift some of these sculptures are beyond the capacity of the equipment we have here in town. I understand the sculpture committee will provide the crane necessary to do this once the pads are poured. Is that right, Nick? Do you know?
I would imagine so. That I have not heard yet, but I can follow up and get confirmation on that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Tigas?
Nothing on this item. All set.
Mr. Hogan?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would like to get some comments from the people who would know better than me how these pads are going to affect the land and the grass and the dirt and everything that they're placed on. Recreation, DPW, whoever.
Okay. Fair enough. Mr. Sagarino, can you take care of that?
I think he left.
No, I'm here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Absolutely. I know that the Sculpture Park Committee has already been in contact and had a discussion with Public Works, and obviously we're committed to helping out any way we can. But in terms of your specific question, my gut feeling is that both DPW and Rec would say that it would be pretty easy to restore those areas back to their natural grass in the event that the Sculpture Park, is not there anymore, or we wanted to move it or something like that. So I don't believe that any of that activity would have a long-lasting impact on those particular areas. We just have to, dig it up and grow some grass there.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Sagarino. I have no questions at all. So, Nick, are you looking for us to give you a time frame, or what are you looking from us?
I think the Sculpture Park Committee would just like, the selectmen to, give the formal thumbs up that, every 2 weeks, they can basically start putting in a sculpture. I mean, if we say that they can start in July, every 2 weeks for 6 sculptures is just going to move them through the summer. But.
Okay. So, Mr. Sagarino, do we need to vote on this, or can we just have our opinions, or what do we need to do with this to make it? We've already approved this, I believe.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. This has already been approved by the board. So I think what Selectman Priest is just updating the board in terms of how the schedule they intend on sort of unveiling the statute. And I guess he's looking for if there's any strong opinions against that schedule that the committee might want to know about. But again, it's already been approved. It's simply a case of he's providing you guys with an update as to sort of what the schedule is for installing the sculptures. And I don't believe a vote is necessary. It looks like more of an update, but I think this is an opportunity where if a selectman was, vehemently opposed to that schedule, that they could point it out, and I think Nick could bring it back to the Sculpture Park Committee and say, why don't we try something different? So.
Okay, thank you. So, Nick, are you all set with that?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the board's time. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Nick. Let's go right with subcommittees. Mr. Runyon.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of notes from COA. I haven't really mentioned COA since the onset of the COVID-19, but I think most of us are well aware that the segment of our population most affected by the COVID-19 is our seniors, of course. Had a nice talk with Marge McDonald recently. She's been doing her best to reach out to the seniors in town. We've got over 600 seniors who are members at the COA who are, registered with the names, addresses, and contact information. And they've been working diligently to reach out to each and every one of them on a regular basis, or as best we can. And obviously, the biggest concern is that they're feeling isolated. Obviously, some of those folks were coming to the senior center Monday through Friday. Others were visiting on somewhat of a less frequent basis. So they're working hard to address the concerns of the seniors in town with under these circumstances. They are providing some of the programs to the seniors through online, through Zoom meetings and WebEx meetings like we're doing currently. Of course, the big problem is that not all our seniors are connected to the internet or have the equipment necessary to participate in those meetings, and it's kind of it's a big concern of ours. And I want to thank the school department. They recently donated 25 iPads. They're going to be refurbished and distributed to some of the seniors in town. I'm sure we could use more. If there's any companies out there or individuals who have Chromebooks or iPads or something like that that could be refurbished and redistributed to some of our seniors, it would be greatly appreciated. I also want to thank Mount Hope. Mount Hope donated $1,000 in gift cards for groceries for the seniors. Those have been distributed, and we do appreciate that. Recently, with the help of our local police and fire department and staff at COA, we had a resident in town who recently celebrated their 100th birthday, and we did a parade, a car parade that we've all become familiar with recently. So they're working hard. Marge and her staff are working hard to remain in contact with our seniors. We don't know when we're going to be able to invite them back to the senior center, but I just wanted it to be noted that a good segment of our population is feeling rather isolated throughout this COVID thing. If you have neighbors where you live, if you could, it might be a nice gesture to pop in and visit with them, or even just sit and chat with them, because that seems to go a long way, according to Marge. Just having a conversation with somebody is really appreciated by these folks who are usually active in the community and get out and about and are not able to do so under the current conditions. So again, thank you to the school department, and thank you to Mount Hope for their help in town with our seniors. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Mr. Tigas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Real quick, it's that time of year again. Fireworks in Massachusetts, as many know, they're illegal, but this is the time of year when the fire department sees an uptick in firework-related injuries. It happens every year. So it's especially important this time of year. As we all know, we just got done talking about how dry it is. So fireworks can injure, start fires and injure people. So just asking you to refrain from using illegal fireworks, and also to commend the fire department. Unfortunately, there was a 3-alarm fire in Billerica last week, and Burlington was called to assist. And just thank Lieutenant Craig Callahan, firefighter Mike Ledhill, and firefighter Sean Killalay for providing support to the Billerica Fire Department. They actually, combated the fire as well. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Hogan.
I was hoping that Michael would mention the work that's being done at the COA building on the parking spaces that we approved last year or the year before, or whatever, like the time it is. Michael, have you seen that yet? The work they're doing?
I did see it, Bob. I reported it. I reported on it in my last selectmen's meeting in subcommittee that that work was ongoing.
Okay, because they're well on their way right now. Also, just one quick thing. I know that most of us aren't out and about as much as we used to, so we don't see the donation boxes, but if you have an opportunity to make a donation to the Burlington Food Bank, they could certainly use it. There are a lot more people and they're a lot busier right now than generally this time of year. So keep them in your thoughts and prayers also. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Priest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nothing new to report this evening.
Oh, very good. I have nothing, Mr. Sagarino.
I just have a quick update, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure the board has received an email from a concerned resident about the disruption to the MBTA 351 and 352 express buses. That was sprung on us. We weren't even provided any formal notice on that. It was released in a newsletter. we're very disappointed. Been working really closely with Representative Gordon's office and Senator Friedman. They're furious about it, and they're all over the MBTA. We haven't gotten confirmation on this yet in writing, but what Representative Gordon had told me just this afternoon was that the MBTA was considering it temporary as part of, that the ridership was down due to sort of the pandemic shutdown, and they would be reconsidering opening it at a future date. We want to get that in writing, obviously, but we just want to let all the residents know that our state delegation is working really hard on the MBTA to get that service restored. I know that many of our residents do rely on it, and we really weren't provided any formal notice at all about this, so really disappointed about that. So that's an update for the board. Hopefully, we'll be able to get some good news from Ken or Senator Friedman shortly on that.
Thank you very much. I usually don't see Mr. Denizio on here. John, do you have anything to add? Any comments about something going on in town? Everything good right now?
Nothing to add, sir.
Nothing. Okay, just checking. I usually don't get to talk to you that often. It's been a while. So anyway, I guess we done. Citizens time. Anything from anybody out there? Eddie?
Nothing here. Nope.
Paul? No phone calls? Nothing? Okay, so at this point, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I moved.
So moved and seconded.
Second?
Okay, we need a roll call vote. Mr. Priest?
Yes.
Mr. Tigas?
Yes.
Mr. Runyon?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Morandi? Yes. Gentlemen, thank you very much. A lovely evening. I really want to thank you all for putting me back in this chairmanship. Thank you. Truly appreciate that. Have a good night, everybody.